The third time I signed divorce papers, I didn't cry. I just remember staring at the pen in my hand, noticing how heavy it felt, like it knew something I didn't when I was young. The clerk behind the desk kept tapping her nails on the counter, and the sound echoed in that quiet office, like a clock reminding me how much time had passed, and how much it had cost me to learn what I now know. By then, I was 47 years old, twice bankrupt, 3 marriages behind me, and carrying more lessons than photo albums. But if you had met me when I was 22, you would have thought I had the softest life ahead of me. I was the kind of woman who ironed pillowcases, who believed Sunday dinners could fix anything, who thought love was mostly about patience and sacrifice. My first husband used to come home smelling like motor oil and winter air, and I would have his plate ready before he even sat down. I thought that was what a good wife did. You give and give and give, and one day it comes back to you. That's what my mother used to say while stirring soup on the stove. Marriage is a long road, she told me once, not looking up from the pot. Just make sure you're not the only one walking. I didn't understand what she meant back then. I understand now. Because nobody tells you that some people will let you walk beside them for years while they quietly build a life that doesn't include you. The first sign that my first marriage was in trouble was so small I almost missed it.
The first sign was a grocery receipt. It was a Thursday evening and I was emptying his jacket pockets before putting the clothes in the wash. His jackets always smelled like cold air and metal, and there was usually nothing in the pockets except loose change and the occasional screw or nail from work. But that day, I found a long white receipt folded into a square. It wasn't the groceries that caught my attention. It was what wasn't for our house. Strawberries, vanilla yogurt, a small bouquet of yellow flowers. We didn't have strawberries in the house because he said they were too expensive for something that goes bad in 2 days. I remember standing there in the laundry room, the washing machine humming, staring at that receipt like it was written in a language I didn't understand. When he came home, I asked him about it the way a careful person asks a careful question. "Who were the flowers for?" I said, keeping my voice soft like I was asking about the weather. He didn't even pause when he took off his boots. "They were for the front office. One of the ladies is retiring." I nodded like I believed him. I even smiled. But that night, when he fell asleep, I lay there listening to the sound of his breathing and felt something unfamiliar settle into my chest. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was the quiet feeling of being moved out of a place you still live in. I didn't know it then, but that receipt was the beginning of my education, the kind you pay for with years instead of money. And that was lesson number 1. When something feels wrong, don't rush to prove yourself right. Just don't lie to yourself. I wish I had learned that earlier, because the truth didn't arrive all at once. It arrived in pieces. The truth arrived 3 months later, on a Sunday. Sunday was always our quiet day. I would clean in the morning, cook in the afternoon, and by evening, the house would smell like onions, soap, and whatever future I thought we were building. That Sunday, he said he had to check something at work. He didn't even look at me when he said it, just grabbed his keys and left like the house was a place he visited, not a place he lived. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the receipt. Maybe it was the way he had started turning his phone face down. Maybe it was the way a woman knows when she is slowly disappearing from her own life. I drove to his work. His truck wasn't there. I remember sitting in my car, hands on the steering wheel, feeling that same heavy feeling I had with the divorce pen years later. That's the thing about truth. Your body often recognizes it before your mind does. I didn't call him. I didn't make a scene. I just drove home, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. When he came back that night, I was still sitting there. The clock on the wall was ticking so loudly it sounded like footsteps. "Where were you?" I asked.
"At work," he said, too quickly. I looked at him for a long time. Then I said something that surprised even me. "If you're going to lie to me," I said quietly, "at least respect me enough to make it a good one." He stared at me like he didn't know who I was anymore. That was the night he told me about her. Not everything, just enough to stop lying and start rewriting the story so he didn't look like the villain. That was lesson number 7. Some people don't confess because they're sorry. They confess because they're tired.
He said her name like it was something fragile. "Her name is Marissa," he told me, sitting across from me at the kitchen table we had picked out together when we were still the kind of couple that held hands in hardware stores. I remember noticing the small things, the way he kept turning his wedding ring around his finger, the way he wouldn't look directly at me, only at the salt shaker, the window, his hands, anywhere but my face. "How long?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "About a year." A year. 365 days of dinners I cooked, shirts I ironed, bills I helped pay, and somewhere inside all those ordinary days, my marriage had already ended. I just hadn't been informed. I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, I just sat there and felt something inside me go very still. "What does she have that I don't?" I asked. And I wish I could say I asked that question calmly and wisely, but I didn't. I asked it like a woman who had built her whole life on being enough. He shook his head. "It's not like that." But it was exactly like that. That night, I learned lesson number 12. Never compete with another woman for a man who is already yours. If he can be taken, he was never yours to begin with. The divorce was quiet. No lawyers fighting, no dramatic courtroom scenes, just papers, signatures, and the slow division of a life. He kept the truck, I kept the dishes. It's strange the things you end up owning at the end of a marriage. Half a set of plates, a few photos you don't display anymore, and a new understanding of how expensive love can be when it's given to the wrong person. I thought that divorce would be the hardest thing I would ever go through. I was wrong. Because 5 years later, I lost something that almost destroyed me. Not a husband this time, but my name, my savings, and the small business I had spent years building. And that was where bankruptcy number 1 began. By the time my second marriage ended, I had already learned how to pack a life into boxes without crying until the car was loaded. His name was Daniel, and he was the kind of man who spoke gently in public and harshly in private, the kind of man everyone else calls such a good person. He wore clean shirts, shook hands firmly, and knew exactly how to smile in a way that made people trust him. I met him when I was trying to rebuild my life after my first divorce. I had opened a small catering business, nothing fancy, just homemade food for office meetings, small weddings, church events. I would wake up at 5 in the morning to the smell of onions in butter and the sound of the radio talking about traffic I didn't have time to sit in. That kitchen was the first thing I had built that was mine. Daniel said he admired how hard-working I was. He said he wanted to help me grow, and I believed him because by then I had learned how to survive heartbreak, but I had not yet learned how to recognize ambition in someone who had none of his own. "Expand," he kept telling me, "you're thinking too small." So we took a loan, then another, then we signed a lease for a bigger kitchen. Stainless steel counters, a second oven, 2 part-time employees. I remember standing in that kitchen the first day, listening to the echo in that big empty space, feeling like my life was finally moving forward instead of starting over. But businesses, like marriages, don't fail in one day. They fail slowly, then all at once. I started noticing bills he said he had paid that weren't paid. Suppliers calling me instead of him. Final notices in envelopes he told me not to worry about. And one afternoon, I walked into the office and found him sitting very still, staring at the floor, like a man waiting for a storm he knew he had created. That was the day I learned lesson number 23. Never hand over responsibility for something you can't afford to lose.
"I was going to fix it," Daniel said, still staring at the floor. "I just needed more time." I remember looking at the stack of envelopes on the desk, red letters, final notices, words like overdue, urgent, legal. The office smelled like burnt coffee and something else, something like the end of a dream. "How bad is it?" I asked. He rubbed his face with both hands. "Worse than I thought." That answer told me everything without telling me anything. I sat down slowly because in that moment I understood that my business, the one I had built from my tiny kitchen, the one that smelled like garlic and hope at 5 in the morning, was no longer mine. It belonged to the bank, to the debt, to the signatures I had written because I trusted the wrong person again. Bankruptcy is a quiet kind of humiliation. No one gathers to watch, no one brings flowers. You just start selling things you once worked hard to buy. First the extra equipment, then the second oven, then the car. I remember holding a small yard sale and watching strangers pick up pieces of my life and ask, "How much for this?" I wanted to tell them it cost me 10 years and a marriage, but instead I just smiled and said, $10 is fine. Daniel and I didn't survive that year. Some people stay when you lose everything. Some people leave because there is nothing left to stand on. I don't even blame him the way I used to. Fear makes people selfish, and failure shows you who is building with you and who is just standing under your roof when it's not raining. That was lesson number 31. Rock bottom is where you learn who is a guest and who is family. I was 39 when I signed my first bankruptcy papers. I was 42 when I got married for the third time. And that was my most expensive lesson of all. By the time I met my third husband, I had learned how to live with less. Less pride, less trust, less certainty about how life was supposed to go. His name was Victor, and he didn't try to impress me. That was what I liked about him in the beginning. He was quiet, patient, the kind of man who fixed things around the house without being asked. After 2 failed marriages and 1 bankruptcy, quiet felt safe to me. Quiet felt like peace. "I don't need much," he told me once while we were eating soup at the small kitchen table in the apartment I had rented after losing the business. "I just want a calm life." I wanted that too. More than love, more than excitement, I wanted calm. So I married him when I was 42, thinking I had finally learned enough about life to choose better. What I didn't understand yet was this. Some people look like peace because they are not emotionally invested enough to create conflict, and indifference can be lonelier than betrayal. Victor didn't cheat, he didn't lie, he didn't steal. He just slowly stopped caring. He stopped asking how my day was, stopped noticing when I cut my hair, stopped sitting next to me and started sitting across from me. Then eventually he started staying late at work, not because there was someone else, but because there was no longer an us he was in a hurry to come home to. One night I said, very calmly, "Do you still love me?" He thought about it for a long time. That was what hurt the most. Not his answer, but the time it took him to find one. "I don't know," he said. That was the night I learned lesson number 40. Love doesn't always end with a betrayal. Sometimes it ends with a slow fade into indifference. We divorced 6 months after that conversation. No cheating, no screaming, just 2 people sitting in a lawyer's office agreeing that something had quietly died and neither of us knew how to bring it back. I walked out of that office at 47 years old with 3 failed marriages, 2 bankruptcies. The second one came after medical bills and bad investments I was too tired to fight anymore. And a life that looked nothing like the one I had imagined when I was a young woman ironing pillowcases and believing love was mostly about patience. For a long time, I thought my life was a story about failure. But I see it differently now. Because when you lose a marriage, you learn about people. When you lose money, you learn about the world. But when you lose everything more than once, you learn about yourself. I learned that being kind is different from being weak. I learned that trust should be earned slowly and given carefully. I learned that not everyone who says we means it. I learned that starting over is a skill. I learned that loneliness is sometimes the price you pay for refusing to live a lie. I learned that pride can keep you in places where love has already left. I learned that peace is more expensive than love, but it's worth the price. If I could sit down with my 22-year-old self now, I wouldn't warn her about the men or the money. She wouldn't listen anyway. Youth never listens, it only learns. Instead, I would just tell her this: choose the people who choose you when you have nothing to offer but yourself. That lesson alone would have saved me 20 years.
Now, when I sit in the morning with my coffee, in a small, quiet apartment that is finally paid for, I don't feel like a woman who failed 3 marriages and lost 2 businesses. I feel like a woman who paid full price for her education in life and finally graduated. People ask me sometimes if I regret any of it: the marriages, the money, the years. I always tell them the same thing. I regret that I didn't learn my worth earlier. Everything else was just tuition. So I want to ask you, gently, like I wish someone had asked me years ago, what is one lesson life had to teach you the hard way? If this story touched you in any way, sit with it for a moment. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, you already know. You're always welcome to come back and sit with me again.